Instead of wasting your time interrogating me, we should be out there trying to figure out who did this.
Okay, Tracy. Who do you think did it? Whom should we interrogate?
Well, I don't know. It could have been anybody. There's a lot of subversive elements here at Carver. Like Rick Thiessen or Kevin Speck and those burnouts. Or what about Tammy Metzler? Her whole thing is being anti-this and anti-that.
Tracy, you're a very intelligent girl. You have a lot of admirable qualities. But one day maybe you'll learn that being smart and doing whatever you need to do to get ahead, and yes, stepping on other people to get there, well, there's a whole lot more to life than that. And in the end, you're only cheating yourself.
Why are you lecturing me?
This isn't the time or the place to get into it. But there is, for just one example, a certain former colleague of mine who made a very big mistake, a life mistake. Now, I think the lesson here is that old or young, we all make mistakes. And we have to learn that our actions, all of them, can carry serious consequences.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what you're referring to, but maybe if certain older, wiser people hadn't acted like such little babies and gotten so mushy, then everything would be okay.
I agree. And I also think that certain young and naive people need to thank their lucky stars and be very, very grateful that the entire school didn't find out about certain indiscretions that could have ruined their reputations and their chances to win certain elections.
And I think certain older people, like you and your colleague, shouldn't be leching after their students, especially when some of them can't even get their own wives pregnant. And they certainly shouldn't be making slanderous accusations, especially when certain young, naive people's mothers are paralegal secretaries at the city's biggest law firm and have won many successful lawsuits. And if you want to keep questioning me like this, I won't continue without my attorney present.
Hello and welcome to Book vs. Movie, the podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D., our book and fit chick.
Hi, everyone.
We're actually doing a book this week.
We are.
Maybe you're new. Maybe you're new and you're looking at some of the other episodes on your podcast app, whatever that might be, and you're thinking, I didn't know some of these were books, and it's possible that they weren't. But just, in case you're new and you're not aware, this is a podcast where we read books, usually books, and then we watch the movies that they're adapted into. But when the pandemic started, we made a commitment to do a brand new episode every single week, not realizing that this was going to, we're coming up on, 3 years almost now?
What is time?
So what we had to do, y'all, is we had to expand what we mean by book to mean really any literary source that gets turned into a movie. We will consider it. Sometimes it's a book like this week, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But sometimes it's a play or a magazine article or something, a story on the radio or a poem. It could be any literary source whatsoever that gets adapted into a movie. We will talk about it. And we have a very fun, this is one we've been wanting to do for years, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But before we do, if you want to make suggestions for future episodes, we've got Banned Book Month coming up. You want to meet other people, other listeners who want to talk about these episodes and meet us, there's a few places on the internet where you can do that.
Yes, we do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it. You can leave suggestions there and reach out to us there. But we're much more interactive in our Facebook group. And so what you do is you just type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. And we've just managed to do something people said you can't do in Facebook, which is we've created a nice space, a nice page where there's no fighting. We just talk about books and movies there. And as Margot said, we can do a magazine article, a novella, a poem, a song. We've done just about everything. It just needs to be a source that we can easily get our hands on. And also the movie needs to be streaming on one of the major apps. So just please keep that in mind when you're offering suggestions. On Twitter and Instagram, we're at Book versus a Movie. You spell all those words out. And on email, we're at Book versus Movie Podcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. We also do have stickers and magnets. If you're interested, we will send them to you in the mail.
That's right. And if you really enjoy the show and you would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also join us on Patreon.
we've been doing the show. We're going to have to say this at some point. We've been doing it for almost 9 years. We've met each other back in, I can't do math, but it was a long time ago. And one of the first ones we wanted to do was election, and it wasn't available way back then. So we've been doing shows for a long time. We have over 100 episodes on our Patreon page, Patreon. So there's a bunch of stuff there that is for free, by the way. So go and just tool around there if you want to. But it does help us to support the show. It helps us get the streaming things and to pay for the hosting costs and things like that to put the show together. And I want to thank Lisa for joining this week from Texas. We really appreciate that. Once again, that's Patreon. And we, like I said, we have a couple of affordable options, but you know, if money's tight, we totally understand. If you could just leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, or just leave a few stars, whatever, or just tell a friend about the show.
I forgot to tell you before we got on the air. First of all, is it Lisa?
Yes.
Is that the name? Yes, Lisa. Thank you. And I love when people tell us where they're from. That's always super fun to hear where you're listening from. Thank you, Lisa. I forgot to tell you before we got on the air that we were just saying I had just had to go to Pittsburgh for a conference for work. And I was saying how I went through the perks of being a wallflower tunnel a couple times. And I was with people, so I couldn't like blast the song, but I played it in my head. In my head, I was flipping my hands out of the moonroof and but I was going to tell you that on the way back, so we flew back. There were no direct flights. So going out, I flew through Denver. Coming back, we flew through Las Vegas. And so on my flight to Las Vegas, I listened to your What a Creep episode about Colonel Tom Parker, which I greatly enjoyed.
Thank you.
It really put me in the mood. I got off the plane. We had about 2 hours in the Vegas airport, and I lost $2 on the nickel slots. But yes, it was a very fun episode. I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
it has nothing to do with what we're talking about today.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was so fun. So highly recommend, y'all, if you haven't checked out What a Creep, that I recommend that episode in particular. It was a very fun one. And he's not the creepiest creep. He's like a what do you call, like
just a basic jerk.
Just a con man. Yeah.
You know, we could bring it back to the show. We did do Elvis and Me. We covered Elvis and Me.
That we did.
And it's in our
We
list.
read it.
We read the Elvis and Me, and we talked about the TV movie. So it's in our regular catalog. You don't even have to pay for it. So check that out if you're interested. But yeah, Colonel Tom Parker was a fun one. I just saw that movie, the Elvis movie, and I was like, I
haven't seen it yet. Is it good?
It's a spectacle. I like it.
Okay.
But you have to... It's a spectacle. I just have to say.
All right. Okay. Now today's movie is not a spectacle, but it was very fun. I remember when it came out. And maybe you remember too. I'm excited to talk about it because we're coming up on an election year. But before we get to that, one more thing. We want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Kensington's newest title, Twice a Quinceañera by Jamila Said Mendez. This is a really fun book.
It's a fun book that you can get on your Libby app, and you can get an audio version or the regular version. It's a book about a woman who, quinceañera is, in Latina terms, is when a girl turns 15, she gets a big party. Not all girls do this, and some women girls just choose not to. But there's some women are deciding when they're 30, if they don't get married, if they're not married yet, I'm going to have like a double quinceañera. So I'm going to have a party for me, and I'm going to invite everybody in my family to celebrate me at my time in my life. I'm feeling good. And so our protagonist is somebody who's not getting married to the guy she's been with forever and a day. And she's going to have a big party because her family's coming from all over the world. And it's Shamila Sayed Mendez. That's the author. Twice a Quinceañera. It's Kensington Books. And I want to say this has really worked. It works out for us because she has a book called Furia. And it was Reese Witherspoon's YA book club pick. So this all is kind of coming together. I was reading this book. It's really a fun read. She's a very funny character writer. It's romantic. There's a fella that she kind of dated a little bit, the character, and then there's she's got this family from Argentina that comes. The family moved to Orem, Utah, so they're Mormons, but there's this Latina family from all over the world that comes together, and it's really fun, and it's got romance. And once again, Twice a Quinceañera by Shamil Sayed Mendez. How did I do?
Pretty good.
Thank you.
Pretty good. I think I'm not Argentinian, so and I know their pronunciation is a little bit different. But yeah, agreed. This is such a fun idea. I love the concept. A lot of like playing with what are your culture's expectations. You have two different cultures who are placing expectations on her and the family expectations. It's really cool. You can find Twice a Quinceañera by Jamila Said Mendez wherever books are sold. Find out more at kensingtonbooks.com.
So let's talk about our book today. And it works out perfectly because, it's Tom Perrotta is our author. And like Margos said, when we started this podcast, this was one of the first books and movies we wanted to cover. This is one of those movies that was just a huge hit when it came out. And just the idea of Tracy Flick, the character, became more than anything. She's like considered one of the big villains of all time in movies, or she's just a caricature of a person. This comes from the imagination of Tom Perrotta, who's written very interesting things. He was a college professor when he originally wrote this material. It's got a lot of early 90s references because it takes place in 92, which, talks about Bill Clinton and
Clarence Thomas, who's back in the news these days.
Yeah. He also wrote Little Children, which is this weird, disturbing story that became a movie. Also, The Leftovers, which was this huge series on HBO. He's originally from New Jersey. Anyway, so the Tracy Flick character in the story, she's a very big character. She's somebody who's a perfectionist. Everybody knows this person, I think, in high school and kind of in life, like someone who seems like they have it all together and are kind of bulldozing people. And I don't know if it's just like getting older, you kind of wonder about people, like what's really going on with them? Are they insecure?
Yeah, it's all, and also like people who take things a little too seriously.
Right.
You're like, really? It's just a high school election.
Right.
We're awfully excited about this.
Yes. And I was wondering why Perrotta didn't have this book in all of his collections, because everything else was available. But it turns out it's because for the last 5 or 6 years, I heard an interview with him, he's been working on the sequel. Like he felt he needed to work on Tracy some more and for good and sufficient reason, because now that, we look back on it and what her character arc was, it was like, wow, he was writing about a 15-year-old.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. And the book, if you're not familiar with the book and you're only familiar with the movie, there are some big differences, but there's also some big similarities. One of the main similarities is that you get the book kind of flips back and forth. You get everybody's point of view, every character's point of view of the action. Not exactly like a Rashomon thing. Mm-hmm. Because nobody's disagreeing about what happened. And also, like with the movie, you're getting their point of view pretty long after the action has happened. Everybody's kind of reflecting on like, whoa, that was a weird thing that happened. I wonder why that went that way. Mm-hmm. I guess it all started, And so it's a lot of you getting everybody's individual point of view. You get more points of view in the book than you do in the movie. But let's just talk about our main characters. I can't remember. Does it start? It starts with the teacher, right?
It starts with Mr. M. He's the main character. It's Wynwood High School in New Jersey, 1992. So we do get mentions of Bill Clinton. Not too many musical references. It kind of keeps it pretty simple.
It's true, but we have a lot of political references throughout the book.
Yes.
It becomes a stronger and stronger theme.
Because it is the election. He's a very popular teacher, always wanted to be a teacher. By the way, this is available on the Libby app, and there's an audiobook. That's how I listened to it. I didn't read it, and it was really fun. And there's a character named Tracy Flick. She's a 16-year-old girl. She's very smart, being raised by a single mother. she doesn't have a lot of money, but they live in affordable house, an affordable home, affordable apartment. She works really hard to be great at everything that she does, and she wants to be president of the senior class or president of the class.
Yeah,
And
student body president,
student
I think,
body
right?
president.
Because you could be in any grade and run for student body president.
Right. That's something I didn't realize, because at the time I thought, oh, they're all seniors. I didn't understand. She's only 15. Let's remember this. So Mr. M is best friends with another teacher at the school. And this man is Tracy's teacher. And Tracy is having sex with the teacher. And it's presented like an affair. And she's a kid. And he's a grown man. Oh, is that your dog?
She's snoring and dreaming.
Margot has a new dog.
I was like, what is that noise?
I can't hear it.
She's snoring and dreaming.
Okay.
Yeah, which I think. Just to set the scene. This is so it's 1992. It's the Clinton election, but this is about 6 years, I think, before the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
Right.
Which, let's be clear, the media treated the same way that this affair is treated in this book. Although I got the impression in the book, and it's certainly in the movie, but I got the impression in the book that that's part of the author's point of like, why are we talking about this? Like, you guys are dating. You're not dating.
No, so
She's 15.
well, so so there's this mention of Glenridge. There are these boys that, and it happened real life in the news, where these boys sexually assaulted a girl that was developmentally disabled, and there were people that supported the boys over the girl. And there was a Law and Order SVU about it, and it's all just really disturbing. But his whole thing was like, well, of course, it's wrong for boys to do that to girls. Like, he's somebody who has some ethics about him, morals about him. He's married. His friend, who's also a teacher, is married. That guy is having a baby with his wife, and Mr. M and his wife are trying to have a baby, but they're having some issues. And then there's a popular kid named Paul, who's an athlete and has an injury, and he's kind of not sure what to do with his life. And what happens is that when it's found out about the affair, is the teacher gets fired and when you hear it from Tracy's point of view, she's a little analytical about things. This is part of the grooming. Like, this man is making it seem like they're falling in love.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's just a kid. She doesn't really understand the bigger picture of what's going on here. And Mr. M doesn't take her side. I mean, he admonishes his friend, like, this is not ethical, this isn't good, but he doesn't call the cops, or he doesn't take him aside and say,
even though it's a crime.
Yes.
It was a crime then. It was a crime.
It was a crime. He told him it's illegal, and he still didn't do anything about it, and still treats it like they're equally responsible for what happened. And so, yeah, he's not great. That's the thing. Like, he's not great. He's just as bad and fallible as everybody else in the story. So you have to kind of accept that with the story. So he gets really mad at Tracy. Like, how come Tracy gets, everything he sees her as somebody who gets everything she wants. And the way the teachers talk about girls and their bodies is really gross. And the boys and talking about girls, which, yeah, I heard that already. Like, yeah. And then Paul has a sister named Tammy, who's gay, or is at least, at an exploratory stage in her sexuality. And she has a crush on a girl that they've been seeing each other for a while. And then the girl kind of has a gay panic and then starts dating Paul and hurts Tammy. And then so Tammy decides she's going to run for president, and Paul's going to run for president. So they're all running for president of the student body. And only one of them really wants to run. And it becomes this.
Yeah. In the book, you get much more of this girl. I forget what her name is. Lisa is who was Tammy's friend, and when they start getting close, she panics and lashes out at Tammy, and she doesn't handle it very well. She lashes out at Tammy, and then she's trying to hurt her as much as possible, and so she starts dating her brother and sleeping with her brother. And Tammy is a very weird, confused, you get much more of her inner dialogue. She's very confused, and she's not, not handling it very well at all. She's really trying actively to hurt her friend, who she obviously, in the book, you definitely get more that she felt something for Tammy.
Yes,
she definitely did, and she's trying to like fight that, and she is just as much as Mr. M. She is very also much behind Paul running for student body president. She's really pushing him with this for some reason. And she, in the book, has this strange, extreme interest in politics. Like, she knows who the Secretary of State is, and she knows who all the people in the Clinton administration are, and how they got to where they are, and like all the other kids are like, "What are you talking about, Leon Panetta? What?" She's a very strange character in the book. In the movie, it's much more cut and dried. In the book, she's definitely like fighting something in herself, but also like really lashing out and hurting people and manipulating people. It's a very interesting character, I think, that we don't get in the movie really hardly at all.
Right. And so Tracy's trying to she's doing the cupcakes thing, and she's just trying it too, and she's giving her speeches and things like that. And Mr. M, the fact that his friend gets fired, his wife kicks him out, and then Mr. M starts sleeping with his friend's wife, who just had a baby while he and his wife are trying to have a baby. I mean, he's not a great guy. And then his wife kicks him out. I mean, there's all these, he's somebody who claims to be morally and ethically superior when you meet him, and then he's a complete mess.
It's very interesting. The whole book is examining morals and ethics. It's this theme that comes up over and over again, morals versus ethics. And also, interestingly, through the lens of the politics of the time, this was something that if you were not around, if you were not an adult in that time, if you were not in the U.S., this was a time when we had this whole, like, the right wing with the family values, and very anti-gay, and a lot of like, what does it mean to be quote unquote moral or quote unquote ethical? And so you have these, in this book, you have these characters. Some of them are adults and some of them are kids, and all of them are a mess. The adults don't have any more of a moral or ethical handle on things than the kids do.
Right.
And it's a really interesting, I just think it's a really interesting character study. But yeah, he sleeps with, so his best friend is fired and in disgrace, and he just is out of the picture for pretty much for the rest of the book. And Mr. M sleeps with the friend's now ex-wife. But in the book, the best friend's wife tells Mr. M's wife, just like in the movie, and she kicks him out. But in the book, she takes him back.
Right.
And the whole end of the book is very different. So she sticks with him through the whole rest of the book. Yeah. And what I wasn't clear about. Okay. So we need to get back to the election. So Tracy, he just cannot stand Tracy.
Yes.
And you as a reader, you're like, well, he's mad about what happened to his friend, but he's not aware of that. He's just like, I just don't like her. Basically. Yeah. I don't, kind of like we heard at a certain election a few years ago. I just don't know what it is, but I just don't like her.
And Perrotta's made that distinction before. Like, she has that Hillary Clinton kind of thing about her. Like, somebody was just like, oh, her voice.
She's ambitious. She's shrill.
She's shrill. She's bossy. And she's just super effective in what she does. She's ambitious and effective. She gets things done. She goes in with an agenda and she gets it done. And so people are just like, but most people are also like, good, let her do it. I don't care. Like, let her run it.
That's high school, right?
High school. Yeah.
If it was, you can't help but feel like if it was a boy that was that ambitious, that this teacher would be all 100% all in helping him.
He would write his references,
advising
for college.
him. Yes. Please. Yeah. And it's very about that, which I really like. And I have to say, I was not entirely as aware of all of these different themes when I saw the movie when it came out as I am watching it now.
No.
So I don't think I would have seen it that way if I'd read the book at the time, I think is what I'm saying. Yeah. I might have I don't think I would have had as much of a perspective on it.
it just time gives perspective sometimes. This book comes out in 1998. It's only 200 pages, by the way, or the audiobook is only 4 hours. It's pretty quick. A lot of the same things do happen, but I mean, Tammy she actually just starts wearing a Catholic school uniform to the school every day until they kick her out because she wants to go to Catholic school. And then she goes to Catholic school and she's like, yeah, this is boring and this education sucks. So yeah, Tammy's got a lot of problems, but he does try to fake the election results. And Paul doesn't even care, but she does win eventually. She gets her win, but it's always like tainted because at first everybody thought she lost.
Exactly.
And he embarrassed her because she got up and stood up because she thought she won. And so she always had that going for her. And then she went to Georgetown University in the story. And we also learn with Tracy, like she and her mom live in an apartment in the center of town. And she's friends with the guy who's the janitor. They don't talk during school days because they just respect one another. Not like she thinks she's better than him. And he likes her a lot. And always like he says really nice things about her. So he's the one who knows that the whole
he knows everything that's going on. Yeah.
Down that school. And says she's a nice girl who works hard and that her mom doesn't have a lot of money. And that's why she's working so hard because she wants to go to school on scholarship and that she gets him a nice gift every Christmas. And, so Tracy's like a person. She's a really decent person. She's just like hyper. She's like really, really like she tries really hard. And so she might be a little exhausting and maybe she'll mellow out when she gets older. Who knows? But in the end of the story in the book, everybody kind of learns from it what they're supposed to learn from it. But he gets back together with his wife and then Mr. M. And then one of his former students gets in touch with him and says, hey, I have an auto dealership in town. Would you want to come work for me? And he's like, well, I'm not doing anything else. Turns out he's a pretty good salesman. And he says, and I like this part of the book, what he says, like, when I'm actually selling, I like it. It's like the downtime, it's when it really bums me out because that's what I remember when I used to be. And one day Tracy comes by to look him up. It's just about when she's going off to college and she kind of confronts him, like, what was this all about? And they kind of have a little bit of a conversation about it, and he feels bad. I think he finally realizes, like, was it worth it? Like, I lost everything because I didn't like this girl, and why did I hate her so much? Was it worth it? And no.
Yeah. No. And he, he never leaves in the book. He never leaves, what is it? Omaha? Is that where they're from?
Jersey in the book.
Oh, Jersey. That's right. In the book, it's New Jersey. So he never leaves that town. He just is. He becomes, and he and his wife do not split up, and his wife eventually becomes pregnant, and so that's one of the reasons why he takes the job at the car dealership is because he's like, I've got a baby now coming, and I've screwed everything up. I'll do whatever job I can do, and so that's why he takes the car dealership job. But yeah, they have this little. They go on a test drive. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you're new, we spoil everything. Sorry, Kim, figured that out already. This is this doesn't happen in the movie at all. He doesn't become a car salesman at all. They go on a test drive and she wants to test drive to the high school. And they're standing out, they're sitting in the car outside the high school, and she's like, I'm just going to go in. I have to get something out of my locker or something like that. And he's like, okay. And meanwhile, he's sitting in the car. I was like, oh my gosh, what if somebody looks out the window and sees I'm in the car with her?
Right.
What is going to happen? And he doesn't run. We don't know. We don't know what happens. Nothing happens. It just ends that she goes in the school and he's in the car just like reflecting on all of this. And that's just how it ends. It just ends like that, just we're getting on with our lives, and time goes on, and there's life after high school for both of them.
Right. And actually in the movie, they filmed that ending.
Oh, really?
Yes. And then the audiences hated it. Absolutely hated it. So they filmed a whole other ending, which we'll talk about the movie in a second. But somebody bought at a garage sale a VHS tape and found it, like from Alexander. It was like from the original. Yeah. So it's on YouTube. I'll post it in the YouTube group on our Facebook page, But it's like a 5-minute clip, and it's just her going to the thing and then going on a test drive. And it just was her like kind of saying like, was it even worth it? Like what you did to me? Like, and he was basically admitting like, no, it wasn't. It was, but I think we'll go into the movie. So I liked the book very much, by the way.
I did too. We were just saying before we got on the air, I did like it. I like I said a minute ago, I don't know how I would have felt about it if I had read it in when it came out in 1998 or whatever, because we just didn't, the culture just didn't, it's hard to say. We just didn't see things clearly in this regard in those days.
I think also I was more attached to like my high school years, and there's just chicks
same.
I knew,
yeah, true,
Tracy, and then years later I ran into them or into somebody like them, and then I think like, oh, they were just insecure and they were just pedaling along like me. Like that's just how.
Or they were just into that.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah,
they were into that instead of sports or movies or whatever. Fine.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think that was part of it.
But I remember when this movie came out and I loved it and I saw it in the movie theater and it's great. So let's do we have a trailer?
We do have a trailer. So let's take a quick break and we'll play the trailer and we'll get right into this movie.
If you're one of the millions of Americans who still believes that honesty, integrity, and fidelity are the cornerstones of our democracy, we suggest you wait for another preview before getting your popcorn. In the nation's capital, a new leader has found a place in the halls of power. But her story began in the halls of high school.
We'll move on now to the presidential race with 3 candidates running. The first is Tracy Flick.
One thing that's important to know about me is that I'm an only child. My mom is really devoted to me. She likes to write letters to successful women like Elizabeth Dole and Connie Chung and ask them what advice do they have for me, Tracy, her daughter.
The next candidate for student body president is Paul Metzler.
I just don't think somebody would do something like that on purpose.
I think you did it.
And if you want to keep questioning me like this, I won't continue without my attorney present. I do not often speak with you and ask for things, but now I really must insist that you help me win the election tomorrow, because I deserve it and Paul Metzler doesn't, as you well know.
The final candidate, sophomore Tammy Metzler.
I'm attracted to the person. It's just that all the people I've ever been attracted to happen to be girls.
You should stop her. She's not qualified.
We can't both run, can we? I mean, we're brother and sister. Can we?
Tracy and I are totally in love.
In love?
Yeah.
So is this a moral situation or an ethical situation?
When I win the presidency, that means you and I are going to be spending a lot of time together.
Cast your vote for Tracy Flick next week. You won't just be voting for me. You'll be voting for yourself.
Who knew how high she would climb in life? I had to stop her.
Excuse me! Will you please be quiet?
Now.
Paramount Pictures presents an MTV Films production.
Order! Order!
Starring Matthew Broderick, Reese Witherspoon.
Hey, what happened to your eye?
What happened to your eye? Are you okay, Mr. McAllister?
I'm fine.
On the road to greatness. Never underestimate an overachiever.
Looks like you could use a cupcake.
Election. Cast your vote.
Or don't vote at all!
The movie is from MTV Studios. It comes out in 1999, which is when all the independent movies seem to be coming out. They were just churning them out like crazy. And it's Alexander Payne is our director, and I think he's from Omaha. That's why he always films a lot in the Midwest.
I like that it's in the Midwest.
Oh,
I think it's good like that. Yeah.
It makes all the difference. And it's at a real high school, and it just sounds like a high school and looks like a high school. And we have Matthew Broderick as our teacher, and Reese Witherspoon, who was there ever a better Tracy Flick than you could get with.
She's I don't think I'd ever seen her in anything before this myself. And again, to set the scene, for 1990, 99 are we talking about?
Yeah.
For us, still at this point, Matthew Broderick is Ferris Bueller.
Yes.
So to see him be the uncool teacher is very delicious. It's very fun to see.
Yeah, he's not the smart ass kid. He's the teacher trying to get everybody to think he's cool and get their respect. Chris Klein was a local kid they hired who's perfect as Paul.
He's so good in this.
Oh my, I forget.
He's super good. I forgot too how really, really great he is. Like you just buy his just this naivete and just wants the best for everybody and just a sweet guy. It's really cute. Yeah. And then what's the name of the young woman who plays the sister?
Jessica Campbell. She's really
great.
good. We have Molly Hagan as Diane. She's the wife of. It's the name is it's Dave Novody. Dave Novody is the teacher that she has the affair with. It's much more clear like how Matthew feels or how Mr. M feels.
So again, like one real big in the movie, Matthew Broderick's character, Mr. M, is much more direct with his friend about like, this is wrong. This is the line and you have crossed it. And he even says there's a really critical thing that he says in this movie that is never said in the book when Mr. Novotny. Okay. He's fired and his wife, kicks him out. And we see the whole scene of that. There's a line that Matthew Broderick is saying kind of in the voiceover. He says that he's lucky, his friend is lucky that he didn't go to jail.
Yes.
And that's not something that's ever said in the book. Like they never get as explicit about it as that. It's just sort of implied that he knows that it's wrong. Whereas in the movie, he's very clear, which again, this was not something that people would say in those days. In those days, with Monica Lewinsky and everything, nobody brought up the fact of how young she was. Nobody brought up the fact of the power difference. Everybody just talked about it like it was an extramarital affair. Nobody talked about it as anything other than that, and that it was only wrong for that reason. So it's not. So the fact that the movie is so explicit about it, I think, is really important.
Yeah, he's grooming her. I mean, he there's a whole scene where like the yearbook committee goes out to dinner and she's the last one left behind and he's talking about, oh, you're so smart and you're probably so lonely because nobody's like you. Like that's grooming language. I mean, that's like he's very sleazy. So Chris Klein, so he breaks his leg so he can't play football. So he's like, he might as well run for student president. And I really liked the part where Tracy is like talking about how angry she is at this like Mr. Popular like gets to run because to him it's just a lark. It's like, well, what else?
Yeah, he's like, well, sure, why not? I got nothing else going on.
Hi, Tracy.
Who put you up to this?
What do you mean?
You just woke up this morning and suddenly decided to run for president?
No, I just thought that.
Thought what?
Well, I was talking to Mr. McAllister about my leg and how I still want to do something for the school. And,
So Mr. McAllister asked you to run?
Well, I talked to him and everything, but he just said that he thought it would be a good idea and how there's all different kinds of fruits and well, it's nothing against you, Tracy. I mean, you're the best. I just thought...
Okay. You're on, Mr. Popular. You might think it upset me that Paul Metzler had decided to run against me, but nothing could be further from the truth. He was no competition for me. It was like apples and oranges. I had to work a little harder, that's all. You see, I believe in the voters. They understand that elections aren't just popularity contests. They know this country was built by people just like me who work very hard and don't have everything handed to them on a silver spoon. Not like some rich kids who everybody likes because their fathers own Metzler Cement and give them trucks on their 16th birthday and throw them big parties all the time. No, they don't ever have to work for anything. They think they can just all of a sudden one day out of the blue waltz right in with no qualifications whatsoever and try to take away what other people have worked for very, very hard their entire lives. No, didn't bother me at all.
And just like her whole life is all about this.
But I also see, like, because she's like, yeah, for some kids, their parents are rich. They get a car when they're 16. They get all these parties. Everything comes easily to them. Like, it's all work for her. She has to work for everything. And I don't think people see, like, how much effort she puts into things. Like, so she's, like, really, really working hard. But you could see Matthew Broderick is just getting more angrier and angrier with her. Like, he's so irritated that she's like she's bungling up his plans. Then Tammy decides to like throw a wrench into things because her ex-girlfriend is now the campaign manager for her brother. I love the speech scene when they're all giving their speeches. And so Tracy quotes Thoreau. Chris Klein just leaning into the microphone, just reading the speech really super fast. Nobody can understand him. And then Tammy just goes to the microphone and says, I don't care if you vote for me. I'm just going to ban meetings like this because this is stupid. And everybody's like...
People!
Who cares about this stupid election? We all know it doesn't matter who gets elected president of Carver. Do you really think it's going to change anything around here? Make one single person smarter, or happier, or nicer? The only person it does matter to is the one who gets elected. The same pathetic charade happens every year. And everyone makes the same pathetic promises just so they can put it on their transcripts to get into college. So vote for me, because I don't even want to go to college. And I don't care. And as president, I won't do anything. The only promise I will make is that if elected, I will immediately dismantle the student government so that none of us will ever have to sit through one of these stupid assemblies again. Or don't vote for me. Who cares? Don't vote at all.
I love that. The scene is really good in the book, but it's way better in the movie, I think.
Yeah.
It's so much more like what you want that to be. I loved it.
Yeah. Then what happens, so he's getting popular, she's making buttons, she's doing everything she can. She's being super efficient and everything she's trying to do to try to, win this election. She's not used to having so much competition. Like, there's just one kid running for vice president, but it's these two running against her. At one point, it's very cute because Reese Witherspoon is petite. And so they have the sign for Tracy Flick on the wall. And
I love that scene. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It's so well done. She's trying, barely she can keep it up there, and it just falls down on her. And she gets so mad that she just runs around and rips down all of the posters.
She just snaps
in a rage.
I love that whole sequence. I love it so much.
And it's
you actually feel for her.
Oh, I'm on her side.
Me too. And when the like she gets it and she fixes her poster and then it just peels right off. Though you're like,
and she goes in the garbage can, and you're like, don't step in the garbage can. It's going to fall under your weight.
I know.
You're a tiny thing, but it's not going to handle it. And she's just so frustrated and mad because it's so stupid. She shouldn't have to work this hard for this dumb job that he doesn't even want. He wouldn't do very well. Like, it's like she's obviously the perfect person for it, but she just rages. And then I'm like, well, what's the big deal? But they're making it sound like she spray painted all the hallways or something. She just ripped down some posters. This is part of where I get, for me, like, Matthew Broderick thinks he's got her, and he brings her into the office and he's explaining to her, okay, someone took down the posters last night. And she's like, oh, well, I wonder who that was. And he says to her about there was something that happened and two people made it happen. Two people made a mistake and someone paid a big, heavy price for it. And then she's sort of saying, like, well, someone got all mushy and they shouldn't have, and that ruined everything. I'm like, does he think she's equally involved in what happened between her?
Yes.
And he does.
Well, because he does. But at this point, we have to remember also, So she snapped. She hit her breaking point. She snapped. She rips down the posters. He also has hit his breaking point.
Right.
He is also not thinking clearly at this point. He's grasping at straws. Everything, his whole world is just like crumbling all over the place, all around him. And so, he's just literally, this stupid election is like the only thing he's got going on in his life. That, he's just determined to make it go his way, whatever he needs to do. And so, when he says that, you're like, really, dude? Because that's not what you were saying before.
Right. And then, of course, what happens, once again, we spoil, Tammy comes in with all the posters and says, that was me. I did it. I
guess I have to go to Catholic school.
Right. Because she just wants to be around girls. So she gets to go to Catholic school. It's a whole thing. And he's still so mad at Reese Witherspoon because she seems to get away with everything. They have the election. And then he has these two very honest, earnest students who are like, okay, we got to open the ballot box. We got to count the ballots. And he's just like, oh, come on, snap it up. Let's go. And it turns out there's only 2 points difference between Paul and Tracy. And she won by 2 points. And the kids, he basically palms 2 votes to be for him versus her. And so she thinks she's going to get elected, and Paul is. And the janitor who was taking the trash figures out what's going on. So, because he knows everything that's going on in the school, and the boys figure this out. And anyway, he gets caught telling this gigantic, stupid lie.
For what?
For what?
What is it to him?
What was it?
Nothing.
To him? Nothing. And it's great because the disappointment in those kids' faces in him, the betrayal that he did upon them. And this is after, by the way, there's a whole scene where he got stung by the bee in the eye.
Oh, it's so funny, which is not in the book at all, but
no,
it's such a nice touch. This so emblematic of everything in his life going to hell, just everything. And he just is so screwed everything up for no reason.
No, he slept with this his friend's, ex-wife, and then she tells his wife, and then his wife just kicks him out. So he's got to stay at this crappy motel. He's got this bandaged up eye. He's peeing against the tree in front of his lawn. He's waiting for his wife to come home. His life is just a total mess. And then so Tracy just gets elected anyway. And then what happens to him? And then so in the book, he gets fired. He works for this car place that sells cars, and Tracy visits him.
And his wife takes him back.
She takes him back because he's fired, and she kind of feels sorry for him. And she's like, well, things are equal now. You did this bad thing, but you also got fired, and that's kind of...
Yeah, it's a lot. And then another thing in the book is it's a lot about people doing weird things to get even with each other all the time. Yes. There's a lot of people trying to even scores.
Even Steven things.
And for no reason, again, for no good reason. It gets them absolutely nothing. So she takes him back because she figures oh, you've been publicly humiliated. And also I've got this baby coming. Yeah, all right. Come on back.
Take a year off anyway to have the baby. So you'll sell cars and we'll do what we have to do. In the movie, it's different. And so it tests with an audience. They hate that ending. And so they had to go back and refilm it. And it takes this bizarre turn. So he leaves Omaha and flies to New York. And it turns out he's having this, I think, a great life. He's working at the Museum of Natural History.
Yeah. Although as someone who used to work at the Met, I have a pretty good idea what he made.
Yeah.
It was probably not very much. Yeah. But it's fun. It is fun to work in that world. Yeah. And obviously he's getting to do, unlike when he's doing this car sales thing, you're like, oh, that's too bad because he really loved being a teacher and he liked, helping people that way. And so at least this way he kind of gets to still do some of what he really, really loves. And I think it's fun. It's fun to have this change of scenery.
Yeah.
And so he's in New York and he's an educator working in the education department at the museum, and he's leading tours of students and stuff and getting to explain things. He's got a woman there who he's sort of starting to see. And so and I love too the end. I really like the ending of the movie. I think it's very fun.
I think it's hilarious.
I think it's hilarious. I think you would leave that town. I do. I don't know that your wife would take you back. Maybe, I don't know, but that to me seemed implausible in the book. Very plausible to me is, just get out of there, man. What are you doing? Get out of there. Go anywhere else. So I like that. And then just when you're starting to think like, oh yeah, wow, look, he's really getting his life back on track. And he's learned some things. Yeah, he's probably not making very much, but he's much happier. He's living an honest life, and he's starting over. And then this like little
I like it. He's like, oh, I see old students, former students, and there's a gay couple kind of.
Yeah.
It's so sweet. So he's in D.C., like sightseeing or whatever, and he sees Reese Witherspoon, and she's coming out of a building, and she looks great. She goes, oh, there's Tracy. And, oh, man, boy, time goes by, and wait a minute, she's getting in a limo? What is going on? He gets so mad. And as the car's driving away, he just throws his milkshake at the car, which is hilarious. I mean,
it's so weak. It's so like,
pathetic.
I love that. And then he runs.
Might ask if I ever saw Tracy Flick again. Well, I did. Just once. I was down in Washington for a museum educators conference, and I stayed an extra day to do some sightseeing. After an inspiring morning on the mall, I was on my way to the Holocaust Museum when never know if she saw me. Probably not. But in that moment, all the bad memories, all the things I'd ever wanted to say to her, it all came flooding back. My first impulse was to run over there, pound on her window, and demand that she admit she tore down those posters and lied and cheated her way into winning that election. But instead, I just stood there. And I suddenly realized I wasn't angry at her anymore. I just felt sorry for her. I mean, when I think about my new life and all the exciting things I'm doing, and then I think about what her life must be like, probably still getting up at 5 in the morning to pursue her pathetic little dreams, it just makes me sad. I mean, where is she really trying to get to anyway? And what is she doing in that limo? Who the f*** does she think she is?
He doesn't really learn anything.
No. I think it's great. I really think it's a very clever ending, and certainly as an audience, much more satisfying than,
right.
The ending of the book is like, okay, they're sort of moving on, but we don't get that far away in time from what happened. We're still pretty close in time to what happened. And so you're still a little bit worried about everybody, I think, in the book. I like in the movie that we get to have some passage of time, and we're in a new location. Mm-hmm. Everybody's, nobody's in high school anymore. And so what happens to these people? I liked it. I think it's a very funny. I remember the whole audience laughing at that end when he throws the thing at the limo. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really fun. I mean, the politics are different nowadays. We say things differently. I mean, it's categorized things differently, but I think it's fantastic performances. It's interesting. I mean, so the Tracy Flick book that's out now, Tracy is an assistant principal and she's trying to become a principal, and she sort of like actually is having more of a realization like, oh, that teacher was grooming me, and realizing like what actually happened to her. And so she's sort of like figuring herself out, which I think is interesting and supposed to be, I was just reading about it in the New Yorker, and it's supposed to be really funny. So maybe I'll check that out. But I think actually between the two, I'm going to pick the movie.
Same. I think the movie it's just extremely well done. And I enjoyed the book very much, but I really liked the things that the movie added. You know, getting to see some of Tracy's home life, I think, was really fun and very helpful, you know, in kind of fleshing out that character. I really like you get to see that teacher get his comeuppance. Mm-hmm. And it's much more, like I said, I like that they're explicit about, like, this is wrong. That is nice. And I think the ending is a better ending for a movie. You know, as far as a movie, I think, I can see how if you were watching that ending, I like it fine in the book, but if I saw it on the screen, I'd be a little let down, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love I love the whole New York City segment, and then the ending is so unexpected, and it's great.
It's that little tiny apartment that he's in. That's just
his little apartment with the socks on the tub. He's drying his socks on the tub.
I get it.
Yep. Yeah. Movie.
Same.
So next time we have a very special little thing that we're doing.
Yeah, we have a special guest that's coming on the show. We'll introduce her next week, but we're going to be covering, and it's her suggestion, and it's a story by reporter Lulu Wang, and it's called What You Don't Know. It was on, it was NPR, This American Life, and it became a movie, and I think she directed the movie, and it's called The Farewell, and it's with Awkwafina. And it's streaming in a bunch of places. It's a super quick listen, and we'll put everything in the show notes, and in the Facebook page, or you can get the transcript and read it instead. It's, you know, up to you, but that's going to be next week.
That's going to be fun. I'm very much looking forward to that. And as we said before, we've got Banned Book Month coming up. Mm-hmm. We need suggestions, is what I'm saying, folks.
Scary books for October.
Yep. And then fall and winter. This year is flying by.
Yep.
But in the meantime, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Brooklyn Fit Chick, and on TikTok at Margot Donahue, and my site is brooklynfitchick.com. And where can they find you?
All of my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama. My website is coloniabook.com.
All right, well, we will be back soon with a new episode, everyone. Thanks for listening, and keep reading and keep cool. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie Podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast group if you want to join that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Book versus Movie. Spell all those words out. If you'd like to send us an email, it's Book versus Movie Podcast, spell that all out, at gmail.com. You can follow Margot D at Brooklyn Fit Chick on social media, and Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thanks so much again for checking out our show, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.